I don't know about you, but this rapid pace of information and the immediacy of news around our country and the world gives me a lot of unease. And I don't know, sometimes just eats at my stomach, gives me a headache, maybe a sleepless night. I don't know if this happens to you as well. Once I had a problem with my balance and a vertigo after a medical procedure, and the doctor asked me if the vertigo or the imbalance was within me or if it was the world outside of me that was turning around. And I thought for a minute, that is the dumbest question. How the heck do I know? But she explained and told me the difference, and I told her that actually I felt inside I was okay, but outside everything was off balance. And she says that was good. It helped her make a diagnosis. It turned out that after a medical procedure, when I came back to consciousness, my ears and my eyes were off by a millisecond in their communication. And that millisecond caused an imbalance. My ears heard one thing, my eyes saw something, and it was not in sync. Now, imagine if such an infinitesimal imbalance can do this to us. How do we cope with the huge imbalances going around us in the country and the world? You know, I personally believe that without judgment, but acknowledgement and awareness, that the strategy of our current leaders in the United States is to make chaos that keeps us completely off balance, so that true intentions to curtail democracy and freedom, for example, can go on while they're getting us all excited about other things. So add to this internal issues in our lives that are causing us to be out of balance, whether our health, family relationships, things going on, financial, it's a lot to deal with. And that's why I think the Zen practices are so important to Unitarian Universalists. We derive our truths from many sources of wisdom. And I think Zen and Buddhism is probably one of the closer cousins of spirituality to us. So this year, if we're going to push ourselves to be beacons of light for justice, spiritual freedom, democracy, and liberty in our community and in the world, we have to have a resilience to be able to give that special message. It is our spirituality that underpins this message. There are many in our universe, here in Jacksonville, Florida, the United States, the world, that don't want to hear this message. So, as I spoke about last week, there are two aspects for us that we need to be grounded in for our personal and communal faith as Unitarian Universalists. First, last week we talked about being aware of our own North Star. What is guiding us? Where are we going? What is worth fighting for, and what do we let go of? The North Star is within each of us. It's our guiding star. It is our values. It's the light. It sometimes doesn't feel like it's shining very bright, and that's okay. It's still there. It's going to sustain us through good and difficult times. And again, if we don't know where we're going, we don't know if we got there. And the answer is not always the end. It's sometimes within the journey. But we have to know where we are journeying. Today, the second aspect I'm going to talk about is our spiritual, mental, and physical health, resilience. How do we protect ourselves from the glut of information, often misinformation, chaos, tragedies, and oppression that we are confronted with every day? We need to have an internal resilience to the whirlwind of imbalance. Some of us do this better than others. We also have to build our resilience about what is going on within ourselves. Some of us do that better than others. At every point in our lives, there's a possibility of internal imbalance. For example, moving to a new school, a new job, new relationships, loss of a friend or loved one. Many of us who are later in life, age-wise, have to let go of what we could easily do 10 or even 5 years ago, and that is stressful. Zen practices awareness, the present moment, meditation, and peace. They are all practices of resilience. If you are in pain, how is it in the present moment? Not very fun, right? Zen practices help us with that, but they can't take away necessarily all of the pain, but it can help with that. If we can maintain inner peace, balance, compassion when we are hit with small things, we will be able to do it with larger things. Let's think of examples of some people that had shown resilience. Some of these may come to mind, you have some others. Renee Nicole Good, who was recently mentioned, was a 37-year-old resident of Minneapolis, was fatally shot by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent during an enforcement operation in Minneapolis this last week. She was described by her mother and neighbors as a compassionate person, writer, devoted mother to a young child who loved her neighbors, particularly the immigrants who she felt were being persecuted. While federal authorities say the ICE agent acted in self-defense, local leaders dispute these claims and describe Good as a legal observer present to monitor police actions. Rosa Parks refused to sit in the back of the bus. Viktor Frankl wrote dispassionately about the unspeakable horror in the Gestapo death camps. Nelson Mandela endured 19 years in solitary confinement. Harriet Tubman, who after escaping slavery came back to the South for 13 missions to rescue other enslaved people through the Underground Railroad, enduring the possibility of immediate death if caught. Now, what happened? Rosa Parks gave a spark to the movement for desegregation that changed life for all of us forever. Viktor Frankl helped not only his fellow prisoners, his logotherapy has helped millions cope with loss and find meaning in their lives. Nelson Mandela not only survived, he helped bring down apartheid and became the first African president of South Africa. Harriet Tubman, along with others, helped hundreds, if not thousands, to reach freedom, not willing to wait for more to suffer and die, but taking action right when it mattered. She went on to serve in the Union Army as a scout and spy during the American Civil War and was an activist in the movement for women's suffrage. And all of these people might not have used these words, but they used Zen techniques within their own cultures, religions, and worldviews. They practiced resilience in a very intentional way. They took risks, but they had been used to taking risk. They each reached a point of a mystical state. And I believe the mystical state is when they make a direct connection from the universe to us. And they did that through their action and words. They communicated that there was acts of injustice being done, and the universe did not want that to happen. Rosa Parks did not just decide one day to sit in the front of the bus. She had been part of a supportive church and a movement for racial justice that had built up her resilience. This is the same for each of these people. We will not all be called to be martyrs and die like Miss Good in protecting our neighbors and fighting for justice and freedom. But we do need to protect ourselves against the buffers that want to knock us down. In the website, How to Do Zen Meditation, we know this, but it's worth repeating. The heart of Zen meditation are a set of principles. One is mindfulness. Zen meditation encourages us to cultivate awareness of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. By focusing on our breath, observing our flow of thoughts, we create a space for clarity and insight. So, whether you're cooking or doing dishes, instead of doing it mindlessly, we end up doing it mindfully. We think about where the produce came from, how it got to us. We think about where the gift that we have of running water in our sink to be able to do the dishes. We think about where all this is going to help us for the next day, whether we eat, whether we drink, whether we have company. All of this is awareness. Non-attachment, one of the more difficult things, to not be attached to what is around us, acknowledging our thoughts as they arise, but not letting them dictate our emotional state. There is the story of the wealthy person whose house burnt down, and the monk that was with him said, "Aren't you upset?" He goes, "No, those are just things." And so he was wealthy, but he was not attached. Simplicity, the simplicity in practice in life, stripping away the distractions. Focus on what truly matters. There's a lot being thrown at us. What can we do? What we can't? What can we not do? Enhancing our ability to be present and experience life fully. Discipline. All of us take some time to reflect each day, maybe meditate. For some of us, 2 minutes is a long time to be quiet. Extroverts have a very difficult time meditating quietly. Introverts are a little easier. But discipline is what gives us a routine, a commitment, and allow us to deepen our understanding. Sometimes the discipline of meditation is to do meditation with something you like to do. So that could be a walking meditation. For me, it could be a sleeping no, I'm just kidding. But it's a meditation. It could be, you could be meditating where you're at the gym. In other words, you can be doing something where you bring mindfulness to it. And then finally, community. Now, whether you're part of this church, covenant groups, other groups, book clubs, we provide support and encouragement with our allies, whether it's iCare or others. We share experiences with others that can enhance our understanding. So being in community is very important. And this community is certainly one of the most important ones for us. So like many Zen concepts, understanding awareness is an experiential act. We have to do the experience. We can talk about meditation, but I would say that a Zen leader who said, through regular meditation practice, you might glimpse awareness. It might be fleeting at first. Grasping it with thinking and an intellectual mind is problematic. He goes on to say, when the mind is like water, the moon appears. And it's the tranquil water that we need to get to, not the water that we can't see through the ripples. What strikes me about water, and Todd and I talked about this, was that it's completely pliable in its liquid state. But yet in some forms, like ice, it can be very unpliable. So I could say, I am like water, darn it, and I'm not going to move. And it also can be very brittle. And so you can break a piece of ice. If you're up north, that's on the roof, and it will break into 1,000 pieces. So the paradox of water in the state that we mostly see it in here is that it is calm, yet in a raging river or the ocean during a hurricane, it can have such a force that even land has no chance against it. It is as patient as the Colorado River, forming the Grand Canyon over millions of years. And it's as fast as a river current washing out to sea. We each have a bit of the four elements in us: water, earth, fire, and wind. But we tend to have one or more as the dominant elements. My earth element is water, pliable, calm, but a little crazy and strong at some times. My second element is earth, stable, grounded, loyal, maybe some good qualities for a UU. Now, Kelly, my wife's Kelly's elements are fire and wind. She exudes an energy in the room and lets it flow freely. So imagine when water and earth meet fire and wind. It's a very interesting combination in our house. All of the elements point to the importance of resilience. But I think water may be the strongest. As wise people taught us in our responsive reading, we have to be quiet and pay attention. We can't see our reflection in running water, only in still water, and that takes quiet. As Kabir tells us, all know that the drop merges into the ocean. But few know that the ocean merges into the drop. Do we really feel this? Do we really know the uniqueness and importance of each one of us? As it was quoted, how should we know what is coming to pass within us when there are no words to grasp it? How could the drops of water know themselves to be a river, and yet the river flows on? Let us be aware that each one of us are drops in this community, and we need to be strongly participating and pliable in how we participate. Are we able to be detached from all that holds us? As water reminds us, all shall pass in time. Limitless and immortal, the waters are the beginning and the end of all things on earth. Bruce Lee was not only one of the greatest kung fu fighters of all time, he was a philosopher, studied philosophy in college, and he bridged Western and Eastern spiritualities. He showed that water in its pliability was a great asset. It absorbed what came to it, reformed itself, and when it was ready, responded to any aggression using the very strength of the opponent. And as we said earlier, quote from him, "Be like water making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object. You shall find a way around it or through it." And I think of where we are today in the world. How do we adjust to what's going around us? How do we find a way around or through it? He goes on to say, if nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. In other words, awareness. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. And he continues to describe how water takes on the content of whatever it is. If you put water into the cup, it becomes the cup. Into the bottle, it becomes the bottle. Into the teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. So let's take on this world. I'm totally fine with that, but only if we practice Zen principles. Be resilient by water, making our way through the cracks of oppression, totalitarianism, working with allies as we find ways around or through injustice, by being assertive in our communication with political leaders, by calling lies what they are, lies, by feeling that our spirituality is as important as any other spirituality, and everybody has the right to their own spirituality, to who they love, and to decide what should be done with their own bodies. Be like water. Strike against truth when necessary. Be peaceful and work for justice at the right time. Let our spirituality be our North Star, and let us, in building our resistance, be like water, my friend. Thank you. Todd?